On today's episode of Let's Talk Dog Business, we are joined by the one, the only, Mike Shikashio. I want to do like a little fanfare, like...
I feel like there should be some sound effects here.
There should be. It should be like this big thing because, I've been following your work for so long and it is such an honour to be able to have you on this episode now and to... I know we've been having conversations outside of this episode, so it's going to be really cool to see where this actual live episode goes because I have no idea. We just follow the conversation and see what happens. But for those random people out there who may not have heard of you at all, which I would find incredibly surprising, but you never know, please do introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is that you do.
Well, thanks for having me on. And this is actually fun for me because we get to talk a little bit about business instead of dogs biting people. So definitely a change of pace, which I enjoy. And that's kind of what I focus on is dogs with a history of aggression. That's my main niche. And I've formed the company aggressivedog.com where I train other trainers and help the general dog guardian with any issues their dog might be having with aggression issues. So that's been my main focus for about a decade now.
I love it. And that, folks, is what you call an elevator pitch.
It is. Very succinct.
Very good, succinct 30-second clip of what it is that you do. And I love that. And I feel like we've had a recent theme of niching, actually. We seem to have had like a run of episodes, not intentionally, but it seems to have fallen that way, whereby businesses in general, certainly in the dog world, are actually performing better. And by better, I suppose I mean the measurement of success could be it's working for that individual in combating all of the areas like imposter syndrome, like trying to create a steady and consistent income and all of the things that we seem to just overwhelm ourselves with. But focusing on that niche area is something that is really helpful. However, it is also something that petrifies a lot of people. So you are obviously known for aggressive dogs, and we used you as an example in our book, actually, to say that this is how you niche because it's exactly what is needed. So tell us a little bit more about your journey into, I suppose, landing in that niche. Was it purposeful? Was it accidental? Tell us the story.
That's a great question, actually, especially if we take it from a business lens, because I started out with, like many trainers do, working with dogs, rescuing dogs. I was doing a lot of rescuing and fostering at the time. And a lot of the rescues will start to send you more difficult dogs as they know you're a more experienced foster home. And that comes probably a little intentionally as well. But you end up, a lot of the dogs I started working with or thought I was working with, at least at the time, had behavior issues. And one of the number one reasons for dogs to be surrendered, of course, is behavior issues. So I thought, what better way for me to help the dogs that I'm trying to rescue or foster than to help them try to stay in their homes and avoid, getting surrendered and the reasons why they end up in rescue. So I took a deep dive into training and behavior. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, of course. Looking back 25 years, I definitely stumbled through some things, but that also really drove my passion for learning more about aggression because there wasn't a lot out there at the time. And so I started taking a deep dive into everything I could read. And I found that in literally 1 year, you could read every single dog training book that has to do with aggression. Like literally, there was nothing out there at the time. So I thought, well, this is also a hole in the market that needs to be filled because nobody's really teaching how to work with aggression cases in a robust way, seeing it from start to finish and all of the nuances. You could buy a book here and there about, body language and aggression or some particular treatment protocol, but nobody was really putting it all together in one go-to place. So I thought, well, let me start working on that. So I actually bought the domain name aggressivedog.com many years before I even launched it because I thought maybe this is where I'm going to focus my expertise at the time. And so I started getting into training other trainers on how to work aggression cases, and that ended up growing into what I have now. So it's part intentional, part just how the world shifted me to doing what I do now.
I love that you bought the domain name ahead of actually doing it as well, because that to me is like that big picture thinking. You knew it was going to get to that point where you'd need it.
At least I hope so.
Yeah.
And it's cheap. That too. I think I bought the domain name for like $1,000 back then, which may seem like a lot for some domain name, but I thought, if that particular aggressivedog.com is probably would have been scooped up by this time, if not. So yeah, I'm glad I got it when I did on sale.
Yeah. So you kind of like you skipped over that really quickly then. So can we go through in a little bit more detail how you built that and how you started working with other trainers and that kind of thing?
Yeah, you know what? And I people ask me too, how do you get into speaking and doing more presentations and training other trainers? And there's really no one set path. It's sort of like becoming known in any other space, any other industry. You have to make the connections. You have to spend the time earning people's trust and starting to do small things, little gigs here and there. So I always recommend, try to do a webinar for somebody or submit a conference or, to talk as a speaker at a conference, the call for speakers, try to get on podcasts like this, really you have to kind of say yes to everything at first. And that's a big no-no, of course, in the long run. We don't want to keep saying yes to everything because we have to manage our time. But at first, you can kind of say yes to almost everything. If you can get out there, write an article, appear on a podcast, all of those things start to add up to where you start to get more recognition for the work you're doing. And people will start, of course, following you and being more interested in your work. So some of the initial things I did early on was, I remember one of the first things I did, actually the very first engagement I did was, it was at an APDT conference in the US. And they had what's called these shorts in the morning. They're 45-minute talks, really, for people that are new to speaking, they want to get out there, so they want to try it, and very short, focused talk. So I did my talk on staying safe in aggression cases. And at the time, this is, again, going back about probably 15, 20 years ago. And at the time, no, again, not a lot of people were speaking about aggression. So, and these talks happen at 7 a.m, like this god awful time to get up at a conference and like roll out of bed to go attend this talk from a speaker you never heard of. But that particular talk, there's close to 400 people that showed up in my morning talk when they usually get like 20 to 30 people. It wasn't for me. It was just the topic. People were just like, oh my gosh, yes, we want to know how to stay safe and not get bitten. So I was so nervous that I literally memorized my talk word for word, every single word, 45 minutes straight. I memorized the whole thing. And I remember there's this lovely trainer in the US, T.O.D. Anderson. She saw like how nervous I was. So she's like, just talk to me, just focus on me. And that's what I did. I like robotically gave my whole talk to T.O.D. sitting in the audience. Everybody else is just watching it. But, because I was super nervous at the time. It was one of my first talks. And unfortunately for me, it was like 400 people showing up to a talk is a lot in the dog training world. So that was my initial step into it. And then, I started to say, well, that was tough. That was stressful. However, I really like it. I like teaching other trainers, something that I felt that I guess I knew okay at the time is how to stay safe. And that started to blossom into, I did some webinars for IAABC. And then I got invited to do a one-day workshop on staying safe and defensive handling with Trish McMillan, who's a colleague of mine. And suddenly we had this huge demand and started doing cities all over the US. People just wanted, oh yeah, let's get that workshop here. So that started growing and we got more and more invites to the point we needed to have our own agent, so to speak. So we had a good friend of ours, Joanne Rechtine, who had a lot of experience in planning medical conferences, and she really knew the organizational side. So she's just started booking us gigs, I guess you would call them, all around the US and Canada as well. And we started going to Mexico and branching out to like Spain and all these other countries. So we probably did close to 100 cities in the course of a couple of years. And that's when I saw the need for the course, which is the Aggression in Dogs Master course. And I started to build that out. And because people were like, we want more. We want to know how to work these cases start to finish. I had done actually another mini course through another company called Dog Trainers Connection. And that's another thing I recommend for people that want to get into speaking and teaching is you might not want to do your own flagship course on your own platform yet. You might find an established platform that already has a large emailing list and they're already in the education space. you can do something for them first. And then once you establish yourself, then you can open up your own company as well, or kind of focus on teaching under your own umbrella, which is what I did. So, so now I'm kind of bringing it full circle and bringing in other trainers to grow their name, and sort of like a talent agent, I guess you can look at it. It's like I try to find people that are up and coming. They may not have a big following, but if I can put them on my platform and they get a lot of exposure that way, whether it's through the podcast or doing webinars or teaching or some aspect, speaking at the conference, those things can really help somebody establish themselves if they want to get into that teaching space. So yeah, it's been a really nice journey, because now I feel like I can help other trainers in the spot where I was 10 years ago.
The early days where you mentioned like what we would call, well, we'd refer to it as like hustling. Like you said, it was like hard. You had to go everywhere. You had to be everywhere. You had to put yourself out. Would you say that is, because we think you have to do that as a, you know, if you've got a drive and you've got a mission and you really want to reach that goal, those early days of literally just not taking on anything and everything. And this is where the strategy bit comes in, because you need those moves that you make to go towards those goals, obviously. But would you say that that's an integral part of your ultimate success, was those early days where you literally just got on everything you could?
Yes, 100%. Because I think the funniest comment I ever got was when somebody commented, "You just kind of came overnight out of nowhere. Yeah. Where'd you come from?" And I thought to myself, well, that was those 100-hour weeks that I spent, for 5 years really chasing after this and doing everything I could to establish, a place where people could go find help for dogs with aggression. So it's kind of a compliment at the same time, it's, so yes, you have to really think about how you can make connections with people. It's something I actually learned from my previous career, my previous job. I used to work at a casino. And one of the things that you have to get good at is really relationship marketing, which is where you form relationships with people. The more people you know, the more people you can help in the sense of providing good service or connections. And I was working in the with what's called the villas, or it's all the high rollers. So people with millions of dollars and celebrities coming in to gamble. They want the best of the best as fast as they can get it. So the restaurant reservation, the helicopter ride, the private jet, whatever it is, you have to have those connections, or else you're going to actually not do as well as the next person, because you're competing with these people to bring in all of this business. So in the same way, it's kind of when you look at anything in the dog training industry, it's about making those connections, those relationships with people. So what I found is that, okay, let's say it's someone like Patricia McConnell or, Victoria Stillwater, people that you end up connecting with. I really found it important to make those connections, to build your brand in a respectful way, with integrity. So you put yourself out there, and it's important that image of yourself is one of integrity, at least for me, is to never ask for anything in return. So it's always giving. So that, if you want something from me, let me know. I'll do the best I can to help you. And that's always the approach I took, which really helped me make connections through the entire dog training industry. All those, if I saw somebody that's an author, I'd make sure I'd go up to them at the conference and introduce myself and just say, if there's anything I could do for you, just let me know. It's great to meet you. I've really appreciated your work, those kind of things. And eventually you kind of just create this really lovely network of people that are either going to invite you to their things, or you can invite them to your things. And it just creates this lovely collaborative opportunities all the time. So that's part of the hustle, right? That a lot of people talk about. Yes, you want to hustle on the other things. You need to be good at marketing. You need to be good at posting on social media, if that's your outlet for reach. Building your email list, all those things add up. But really what helps is the connections you make with people. It's by far, especially in the speaking and conference and course side of things, by far the most important thing you can do. Because if not, we build these little isolated silos, right? Which in the long run actually hurts the business side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough, we've just done a podcast episode on JVs and how that connection in those joint ventures and all that collaborative work is so important, and we laugh about it because we say we are the ultimate JV with being Joe and Vicky. It brings that JV together. It's exactly how we met, through that collaborative space. And even creating assets like this podcast and being able to have, wonderful guests on like yourself, and having to, getting that opportunity to meet other people. And I think it's something that is so prevalent in this industry, that we are so afraid to put ourselves out there, that we're causing so much damage, not only internally to us as individuals, but we're damaging the perception of the industry from a client's perspective. And also we're damaging that industry within itself. It's like a ticking time bomb. And all because of this fear of not wanting to put ourselves out there to be able to have these conversations and be able to create these connections. And it's almost like we've lost the art form of human to human connection.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I see is people are worried about, that image of them hanging out with somebody else, right? And so that's one thing I really had to get over, was that because I network with so many people and collaborate with so many people, I see the good in people. Really, that's, if we see so much of picking out the bad in people, or this trainer's doing this technique, or talked about this, and that's all everybody focuses on that. I have sort of a bad habit sometimes, because I think I'm a little too trusting. But it's finding the good in people and saying, okay, if this person wants to come on my podcast and talk about things, sure, maybe they do some things I don't agree with. Maybe they use some tools that I might not use myself, but maybe they're really good at this particular business topic, or this particular breed topic, or this particular training aspect. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. However, the thing that, and this is especially true for anybody, again, that wants to, grow their space and grow their brand, is that you're going to get people that are upset about that. So they see you talking to somebody like, oh, that person, I don't like that person, or that person was, mean towards me at one point. And they see suddenly Mike is talking to that person. It can feel like a betrayal to that, the person seeing that. So, and I have to recognize that, I do my best, of course, not to platform anybody that's truly harmful, but I've made mistakes. I've had hundreds and hundreds of guests on over the years in different formats. So yes, I make errors, but that's one aspect, is that putting ourselves out there when you start to network with other people, not only includes what you do. So putting yourself out there, like the techniques and tools and training sessions, that's one way of putting yourself out there, but then putting yourself out there with who they see you, talking to. That is another layer of that, where it can become problematic. So I've had to really navigate that and say, well, I'm looking at the good side of whoever I'm talking to or networking with first and foremost. And so, and if people still want to hate you just because you talk to somebody, then you can't let that, of course, weigh on you in the long term, because you're going to see that at some point. You're going to get haters. You're going to get criticisms. You're going to get all kinds of other things thrown your way. Doesn't matter who you are. I tell people that I don't care who you are. I don't care how you walk the line, just exactly how you think everybody wants to hear it. But that's a mistake if you think if you're going to move forward in your life trying to appease everybody by your actions and your words, and just carefully tiptoeing so everybody's happy. Doesn't matter who you are. It's going to happen where you're going to get those haters. And if you know that ahead of time, it makes it a lot easier to deal with them in the future. So that's another big piece of advice I try to give people that are again, looking to grow their brand or getting more into teaching or speaking, is just get ready for it, because it's going to happen no matter what you do. Right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're prepared for it, then it's a lot easier to deal with. Not easy, but it's going to make more for a smooth transition in that stage of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually starting to get a little bit of hate now, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, hate might be a bit of a strong word.
Well,
it's a bit controversial.
Yeah. And it does stem from those, because we very similar to you, we always look at the opportunities and the good, and what can we learn from this. And yes, okay, you may not agree with absolutely everything, and that's fine. And I'm not even, arguably that methodology thing will always come up because it's the industry that we live in and work in and breathe, and it's our lives. But even outside of the methodology, you may not like how somebody approaches their marketing because maybe they want to do more of a disruptive style. So like Rob Moore, the guy who owns this particular agency, he is known as the disruptive entrepreneur, and that is his whole brand. He likes going out and being disruptive. And there is going to be a lot of people out there in the universe that go, I don't like that, because maybe you're doing it for clickbait and maybe you're doing it for this, that and the other. And then on the flip side, you've got people that are going, oh my God, like you're bringing all these issues to light. It's incredible and I love it. And that's my following. And it's something we always lean in on and say, you have to be so at peace, I suppose, with your purpose and your business purpose and your own value set, and how if you can go to sleep at night knowing that you are operating from that space of integrity and that ethical awareness of this feels right for what you intend, and your intention is always to try and support or help or guide or whatever it may be, then yes, you can have conversations with people. And you know, some of the feedback we've been getting recently is very to the point in going, if you get that person on your podcast, I am not going to listen ever again. And we're like, oh, okay then.
Throw us a little bit.
It is. And it's almost that, you know, you are taken aback initially and going, oh, okay. And, you know, we're only human. We'd be going, oh, well, I don't want to offend you. However, that conversation with that person that we might be thinking about getting on, okay, yes, we may not agree on all of it, but you also can't argue that the thing that they are doing incredibly well, you could learn from it. Mm-hmm. So just take that bit from it instead.
Yeah. I always tell people that once you get your first hater, you know you've made it.
Yay, we've made it.
And what you're really aiming for is 1 million haters. Because if you have 1 million haters, you'll probably have 1 billion people that are listening to you and actually like what you say. Because I find that there's a percentage actually that, you know, you start growing to let's say you have 10,000 followers on a social media channel, you know, take 1% of that. That's the amount of haters or negative comments you might see. Now, if you have 100,000, it's going to feel like a whole army of people coming after you. If you have 1 million followers, it's going to feel like, whoa, there's like so many people. But you're always going to have a percentage of people that are going to have a problem with what you do. And it gets viral too. You know, you have people latch on. It's happened to me. It's happened to so many people I know, where you become the hot topic of the moment of like, oh, Mike Shikashio said this or did this or talked to that person. And it's tough at first, but once you recognize that, it's really just this, it's math. It's a percentage of the number of people that are following you that you're going to have people talking negatively about you. And especially if they all hang out with each other and kind of want to pile on, it can feel like a lot. It can feel like a lot. So I always tell people, be prepared for it. But it really, if you think of people that are really, really well known, one of our world leaders, right? Just how much people will talk about them negatively. It can feel like so many people, but it really is. It just boils down to you're building a following. So be prepared for it. It's going to come. Right?
And from someone who's been there and doing it and still doing it now, what's your strategy around dealing with that then? Do you respond to those people? Do you just rise above it? Do you pretend it's not happening? Like, how do you?
It depends. It depends. Some people I just flat out ignore or block because they're just not, they're not coming from a good place, and nothing you say is going to change their mind. They're kind of purposely, either attacking you or they have an agenda. So I either ignore or block those people, but I do want to give people a chance. I don't feel like I want to turn a blind eye to every negative comment, because there's something I can learn. So especially if somebody comes from a good place, they're respectful in their conversation, which is a lost art in itself. But, if they come to you and like say, Mike, I really didn't like you that you had this person on, or you were talking to this person, or you brought up that subject, whatever it is, I'm going to give that person that opportunity, and I'm going to try to learn from it. That I think is important, because if we just say, oh, everybody who disagrees with me is a hater, that's going to shift us back to that silo of ourselves. Like, this is everything I say is the only way. And that's not a good place to be either. So I think we should take the opportunity to learn from others, but at the same time, protect our own needs and our own emotions, right? Our own energy, because you can only take so much of that. So it also depends on how you're feeling. Just like the dogs we work with, right? We have to be, advocating for their needs and where they're at in their life and where their stressors are and what their stress level is. And so the same thing for humans, you have to take self-awareness of where you're at, because there's going to be months where you'll be like, I'm exhausted. I've been really working hard on my business, and now I've got, people that are getting mad at me online or whatever. Do I need to spend the energy addressing it, or just do I need to ignore it? Because sometimes you really don't need to do anything about it. And sometimes I suggest not doing anything about it because we've seen people, they get attacked online and they come from a place of emotional defensiveness, and they're going to say things back that maybe they shouldn't say, or probably could be offensive in and of itself. So and I don't blame them, because they're just defending themselves. If you're attacked, you're going to defend yourself, especially if they're attacking somebody you love, or, that bear is going to come out, right? So I think, recognizing that as well. It's like, when you feel attacked, take a moment, like, you don't have to respond right now. You feel like you do, right? You want to respond, you want to comment right away, but you don't always have to. And in fact, sometimes if you don't, that's the best move, because those people just go on to their next victim. Right? They go look for the next thing to talk about. So, it's a nuanced question. I love the question, but it's a nuance depending on, where you're at, what the topic is, who it is, and all those things. And recognize that there are people that are just, that's what they like to do. They like to go from person to person, finding what they need to attack somebody, and I also remind myself that it has nothing to do with me. It's just where that person is at in their life, their own possible traumas, their experiences, their learning history. Just like the dogs we work with, right? We need to empathize with that. So I've learned that this person really isn't hating me. They just got something else going on, and they're taking it out on me. That's, obviously not the best thing for us, but when you recognize that, then you take it much less personally, and you actually sometimes just ignore it, because you realize this person's just not in a good space right now, and there's no need for me to add to that. Let's just let them be, and they'll move on, or figure it out on their own. So, yeah, lots of ways to navigate these things, for sure. I've learned that.
I love it. And actually, I love the awareness as well that we have to think about how that other person is feeling as well. And I think there's lots of crossover in that. Yes, absolutely. In that scenario, that is one reason for that lash out. However, flipping it back into just how you're operating on a day-to-day point, like the amount of trainers we hear from regularly, like throughout the day, every week, it's hard out there. No one's wanting to buy. No one wants to do this. People are shit. People don't want to put the work in. But all of the dumping of all this negative stuff on your clients or potential clients. And again, I think it comes back to this art form that we seem to have lost. That we say it so many times. I feel like it needs to be our new tagline now. But we're not in the business of dogs. We are actually in the business of people. And I think it is so overlooked because of how much we all care so deeply about our dogs and how passionate we are about learning the dog education. And I think we always forget that there is a human being attached to that. And they are the ones that are going to make the decision as to whether or not you get the opportunity to work with their dog. And knowing where that individual is as a dog guardian, a dog owner, however you want to refer to them as, they are going to have their own shit going on. And it is your duty, I suppose, as that business owner, to understand your business inside out, bringing it back to that purpose and passion piece, that you know who you want to be attracting into your business. And it's nobody else's business other than who you are trying to attract and who you are genuinely trying to help. But really understanding where that person is in their life, in that situation with their dog at that moment in time. What are the emotions and the words and the phrases that they would say and think and feel? And how can we connect with those?
Definitely. Empathy is something I talk about all the time, especially in aggression cases. And the thing that I find it gets forgotten in all of the debates and all of the conflicts, is that, we are, as you mentioned, we're working with animals and we're just working with sentient beings. And so, it's sort of interesting because I was just in Japan and I posted a picture of Hachiko, who's the famous Akita that came back to the train station every day to wait for its owner who had passed away tragically. But the dog kept coming back, and it just showed the devotion. So they have this big statue of Hachiko there, and I showed the picture on my social media. And, there's an interesting comment, somebody saying, is it really the dog missing the person, or is it the hot dog stand that's just happens to be there? And it's a good point because it's kind of looking at the science of behavior, the antecedent arrangements and things like that. And it had me thinking, sometimes we try to wrap our heads around the science and the analytical aspects, almost like mathematical approach to let's look at behavior and the quadrants and this and it's important, right? We have to understand the science. But when we start to lean so much in that direction, we sometimes forget seeing how people are looking at the other side because we're not doing taxes here or repairing a dishwasher, right? This is there's when we say like your definition of love, right? So you guys love somebody, right? But then now prove it. Like, how do you prove it? Prove it to me through science, prove it. And what's the answer to that? It's not easy, right? And there's that side of things that we forget about the connection we have with dogs and this person's, how they're relating to their dog, their relationship, their love for their dog. They can't put that into words, right? And so when you see these debates and things like that, sometimes we miss that human element, the dog and human element as well, in considering empathizing for that side of things. So this person has their beliefs. They believe maybe they can communicate with animals. They believe they can sense their emotions, whatever, right? They have that side. And for the person that's really scientifically analytical, this side's going to feel really, like woo woo. And this side's going to be where they're sitting at. And we have to remember that these conversations are deeply involved in both of those aspects. This emotional side, however you want to label it, that gets missed in these connections and the talks and all this, arguments and debates. And so when I, again, talk to trainers that are having difficulty with negative comments from the clients or other trainers, whatever, just you also have to remember it's very complex. It's very nuanced. It's very much, many factors. And it's always going to be like that because we love dogs, and we all have different definitions and views on what that's going to look like. And it's never going to be one standard answer, right? So anyways, that's my thought on that.
It's a definite theme of today. We've just interviewed oh God, my mind just went blank. Isla Fishburne this morning, and she was talking a lot about exactly what you were just talking about there with the charge, she calls it, like when someone reacts, like could be a dog or it could be a person. And it's having that ability to just stop and pause and decide what you do from there and look inwards and look at yourself. And she talks a lot about the spirituality and the love aspect. And it is that, isn't it? It's that science versus that. And you've got to kind of get that balance between it, haven't you? And I think when you actually pause and stop, it's like there isn't really a problem. And exactly like you've said, like sometimes you respond because that might help the person and you might be able to kind of have a rational conversation. And sometimes the decision might be that actually I just walk away and I don't engage and I don't get myself involved. And that is the best thing for you to do for you at that particular point and the best thing for the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes there's an incompatibility, right? And it's especially on that side of things, right? We can teach them. We might be on the same page on the technical stuff, right? Teach your dog this stationing behavior, this ABC kind of thing. But if you're missing this side, then you're still going to have a hard time in that case. Because as you guys mentioned, it's the people. It's a people business. Yes, we're looking at dogs, but it's very much the people, especially in aggression cases.
Yeah, and I keep coming back to how it's knowing your ideal client base, knowing who it is that you are talking to, and almost being okay with handling that rejection piece as well. Because I think it's this ability to be able to recognize in knowing that you are not going to be for everybody. You will have your own thoughts, your own beliefs, and it's not your job to persuade other people to think the same way that you do. It is, again, kind of bringing it back to how we feel about it. It's our duty. Like, CBA is our duty. It's like, this was our purpose. This is what we were meant to do. And we didn't realize it until we'd met each other. It was bubbling under the surface in different ways. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, look, here it is. And this is why we show up every day. And we have to be okay with knowing that some people won't like what we have to say. They might think it's a load of rubbish and go, no, actually, I'm just going to go and listen to this person over here instead. We're like, that's absolutely fine, because ultimately we get to operate in this space of our integrity and going like, we are showing up how we know how to, with good intentions. And if it's not received that way, then we apologize. It's not the intention, and we know that. And sharing that message that you purposefully want to get out, not in terms of persuading somebody to start thinking how you do, but thinking about how you can inspire that change or inspire somebody to think differently, but just through showing up and doing the thing that you are going to do well. And as part of that, you will get rejection. You will have people say, no, actually, it's not for me. You will have people say, oh, I'm sorry, it's a little bit more than I wanted to spend on all of this stuff. And arguably there's skill sets that you could learn to, from a sales point of view, in how to counteract that. And what you mentioned earlier about everything being really complex, ultimately being a business owner or even just existing in this life is so complex, because you are navigating so many different relationships, so many different skill sets that you need to learn. You mentioned again earlier about how being this business owner, you're now suddenly in, like, you're doing sales and marketing, you're building connections, you're doing this networking, you're now flying all over and traveling and doing this hustle stuff whilst trying to have a life and be a friend or a partner or a parent or whatever it is. It's navigating all these complex roles. And I think there is so much pressure we each put on ourselves to make this business side work, when actually, when we just take a step back and go, are you living your passion? Are you being able to do what you do? And are you being able to be paid accordingly for whatever it is you need to be earning from that? Because it's going to be different for everybody. And I don't know what the point I'm trying to get at, but it's just that whole complexity around, there is so many things to navigate, and that pressure almost we need to take off of ourselves whilst being super aware that people are complex, and we have to navigate this because it is a crucial part of the business.
What do you guys recommend to your clients for when people feel overwhelmed with how many things they need to learn? So they want to get better at marketing. They want to get better at the training. They've got to take this course because it's some new technique that's out there. They want to learn how to, meet people and build those relationships, but they're an introvert. And so they've got all these things piling up. What do you guys recommend typically for that overwhelmed client of yours?
Yeah, we get that a lot.
We do get it a lot. It's going back to, we always try and bring everything right back to that baseline, I suppose, and going, okay, so what is it you actually want to do? What do you want to achieve? Like, forget everything else, forget the comparisonitis, forget what so-and-so's doing over there. What do you want to do? If no one was judging, what would you want to do? Let's start there. And then we look at the business model that we've inevitably created through accident, because I think a lot of us fall into this as a bit of a hobbyist business, or even if it's a bit intentional, we maybe take advice from some of these CPD providers that are excellent at dog knowledge, but not necessarily great on the business front. And we all fall into that trap. I've been there, done it. And so it's stripping everything back to go, when we're feeling overwhelmed with all of the advice that is being given, because even from a business coach point of view, like, we would be telling you to do one thing and then another business coach may be telling you to do something different. Yeah. We find our role in this in saying, we're not here to tell you exactly what to do. We are here to help you figure out what the next logical step is for you in your business, for where you are at currently and where you want it to be. So it's almost creating that roadmap. And we like to use the analogy of a sat nav or that GPS system where you're going to put in that end destination. So for starters, we need to start thinking about what it is we do want to achieve. And then how can we reverse engineer it and start plotting those steps in to go, okay, so how are we going to achieve that? And then what are the spin-offs that are going to happen from there? And funny enough, we've just recorded an episode similar to this, haven't we? Where we were saying from CBA's point of view, our initial desire was we want to create a business, a company, an organization that the dog world would essentially pay attention to and go, oh my God, like you can create a business that is sustainable and it pays what I need it to pay. Because again, it's different for everybody. And I get to do the thing that I love without that fear of judgment and without all of that. And that was our big mission, if you will. And then tactically, we have to look back and go, oh my God, right, there's so many things we need to do. We need to be present on all the social media platforms. We need to get into all these speaking gigs and all this stuff. And we need to write a book and we need to do this and we need to do that. But instead, we just went, what's the one thing if we was to do right now and just go all in on it that would make the biggest difference? Yeah. And for us, that's where we decided with the podcast. We were like, that's going to help us get to that goal. So then you do that and you start implementing that and then you go, right, okay, now what's the next step? Now we've got an audience and now they're asking us, how can we work with you? And go, right, okay, what's the next step? And it's just chunking it up into small, manageable bites.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Because I had the same struggle. It's like, all right, I've got to have an Instagram channel. I got a Facebook group. I got to do this. I got to do that webinar. Like you start getting overwhelmed because you want to do all the things, and it's counter to my advice early on is you want to say yes to everything. But when you start actually building stuff for your own business, your own brand, your own platform, that's much more time consuming. It's not just showing up for a 90-minute interview or something. It takes time. And what can happen is it dilutes everything because you're trying to do too much. So focus on the one thing, let's say, all right, I want to just go on building a big email list. So I'm not going to try to do that anyway. I'm going to have lots of great leads to my website that farms those emails, or maybe I'm just going to go all in on Instagram, build a big following there. And once you do that, then you can support the other platforms much faster because you already have that audience wherever it is, email list, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your following is. And it's, so yeah, anybody who's out there, that's my other advice, because I did the wrong thing. I was like, all right, I'm going to do all the things. And it got diluted. Like I have a YouTube channel that is not my main focus. It's got stuff on it, but that can actually be more harmful for you if people say, well, I don't get it. It's only there's like 800 followers or something there. It doesn't make sense. And it can actually harm your brand if you're not maintaining it and keeping it up to date with all the things that you typically would. So yeah, I think focusing on one thing. And then the next step for me really was hiring people, so things that I wasn't good at or felt I needed, an accountant was the best thing I ever did. An accountant and a bookkeeper for me, it's like the best thing I used to, because I'm like a math person, but I was spending so much time on accounting and bookkeeping. And so I ended up hiring somebody years back that does that all for me, because that's an area of my life that I know that somebody's going to do better than me. I'm not going to try to learn it to that level, and they're going to be able to do it. So that same thing can be done in so many of the areas. So from a business growth standpoint, I do recommend finding contractors or employees that can do the things that are super time consuming for you, especially if you put a value on your time and it's going to cost less to have somebody else do it. All right. So CEUs, for example, or you call them CPDs, there are continuing education units anyways, inputting that. So people take your webinar or course and then they need those credits. That can be enormously time consuming, but it doesn't make sense now for me to spend all that time, replying to those emails and inputting all the CEUs, hire somebody for that, because that's going to allow you the time now, that freedom of time, which is much more valuable, where you can put it into other projects or other things. So I do recommend taking account of your time spent, because that's the most valuable thing at a certain stage. It's valuable to all of us, of course, but it becomes really valuable as your business grows, because you that 10 hours that you can get back, now you can focus on this other project that's going to make you 10 times more than whatever it would cost to hire somebody to get this 10 hours back. So the 2,000 hour year time frame is those 2,000 hours. Put a value on it. Figure out, what is your yearly revenue? What do you make in a year? Put those, assign an hourly amount to it and say, if this thing that I'm doing is not going to pay me this amount that I feel that I'm worth, then it's not worth it for me to do it. Or it should be paying somebody else to do it. And then that really helps you grow things. And that's tough. That's the tough step. You guys probably hear this from some of your clients, is that, oh, I've got to support somebody's salary now. I've got to actually pay this person. I'm only making this much revenue. And that's tough. I know it's a hard one to get over. But once you get that person and you find the right people, you will find that it's an investment. You're just making a really good investment into your business, because that's freeing up your time to continue to grow it in other aspects. So, so don't be afraid to hire people when you get to that stage where you feel like you need it,
And it's like, we look at it like segmenting into lists of like your £10 tasks, £100 tasks and £1,000 tasks. And you want to do those £1,000 tasks because they might be the collaborations and the connections and the bigger picture stuff. And I think if you look at it in that way, it becomes a little bit more simple, and it makes it a more acceptable thing to do, to then go, I am going to outsource that actually because I'm needed for the other stuff. So I think that's a really nice way of looking at it.
Because there's an ROI on your time investment, right? If you say yes to doing a podcast or yes to an interview or something, you have to kind of figure out, is it worth your time investment? You're not spending any money. You're showing up on a podcast, which is nice marketing for you, but is it going to be worth your time investment? I still say yes to podcasts, no matter who it is, because I love the interview aspect. So I'm like, for me, it's always like, it's more enjoyable for me just to jump on a podcast than some of the other things I do. But so for me, I don't view it as like really much of a time cost, because I enjoy doing them. But for people that are doing them, you might get, I probably do 50 podcast interviews a year. And that could be an enormous time consumption for somebody. So they have to decide, is there positive ROI or return on investment in that time spent? So think about that as people grow and they get more invitations to do things or collaborations. Determine, is this going to be a good ROI on my time investment? Because if not, you can fall into a trap of, you're committing to this, you're committing to be on this board of advisors and this project and this and that. And next thing you know, you're like juggling so many balls on top of your business, and you realize that those things really aren't paying off for you in the long run. So always evaluate not only money investment, but time investment and effort.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to highlight as well, because that, like the way I'd look at a podcast, I think personally as well, that's an asset that is going to be around forever, hopefully. And there's always going to be new people that are going to start following that podcast, and they're going to go right back to the beginning, and your episode hopefully is always going to be there. So I would look at it that way. But there's I don't know, I guess as you grow and people become more aware of you, you are going to get asked to go on more things. And I think this is where you do need to be really strict with that time, as you've said, because you could say yes to everything and go like, oh, people want me. Oh, I'm so like in demand. And then you kind of sit there and go like, but what is that going to do for me? And although we do want to help other people, and we it should always be like a nice fair exchange of time for whatever it is like in return, I do think that sometimes we are inclined to say yes if we are just a nice human being, and then literally go, oh, well, that was a complete waste of time, because that's not going to do anything for anybody really. And I was only speaking to a client this week about something they'd agreed to do, is to go into somebody else's community and host a workshop, and was like, awesome, I've been asked to do this thing that like feels really good. And then when he sort of asked me a question about it and we dug into it a little bit deeper, he was like, actually, I don't think I want to do it, because I hadn't looked at the bigger picture, and I hadn't looked at where that could lead me or where it won't lead me. And now you've asked me those questions, I've actually rethought the whole thing, and he actually pulled out of it. And I think these are the questions that people aren't naturally asking themselves, because you wouldn't do that, if you haven't had any sort of, you haven't done any business kind of official business work, if you like, you're not going to know to have those thoughts about it. And he was so grateful that I just asked a few simple questions in, well, where's that going to go then? What happens after that? And where do those people go? And he was like, Oh, that's a really good point. I have no idea, and I actually don't think I should be doing it. So, that was a nice realization for him.
Good advice. Yes, I love that. I love that so much because it's easy to focus on, okay, what kind of questions are they going to ask me? Or what is, you're focused on the content, but we forget about the investment value of it, like what's going to happen after. And so it's important because it's hard to determine, what is appearing on a podcast going to do for me? How many new followers or product sales or whatever am I going to get out of doing this particular interview? And there's no easy answer because it's really hard to tell. So it's important, I think, people that are getting into that space and starting to branch out is to just do a little research. You can find this stuff online and through Google searches or AI or whatever, but just learn what the metrics are on how to track those things. Pay attention to, for instance, your email list. Do you see a spike in the number of new subscriptions you get because of the podcast interview that just got released? Can you track that? Is there any kind of metrics you can look? Your Google traffic. Are you seeing more traffic at that time because of a particular event you did just happen to come out? So that will give you a little idea of the future value of those things. Now, again, it's hard to track, but there's metrics out there that will show you what the best ROI is on a particular appearance and based on that person's audience too. So a small podcast, you might not see much, but if you get on a big, show or something like that, it can make a huge difference. So, being aware of those numbers may not matter at first, but eventually, once again, you start getting a million different invites, you're going to have to learn how to say no gracefully and, kind of balance your time. So the way to do that is to look at it like any other investment. It's like, is this worth my time? And that'll give you the answer. Unless, well, for the most part, of course, we always like to help each other out in this industry. And, I try to say yes to as many things, even if I know there's no, necessarily good ROI in it for me, but if it can help grow somebody else's brand or their business, I'm all for it. So I think that's also a thing to think about is other reasons other than the investment value of your time.
Yeah. And I think that's a really nice point to make because what we see so often and bringing it back to the bit that we absolutely love, which is helping people figure out that strategy for their business is what we see a lot of, and not even just in this industry, like across industries, a lot of businesses are adopting 6, 7, 8-figure strategies and trying to apply it to a business that isn't even turning over 50K. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier, like depending on what stage of business you're at, like that first time period, however long that is, of that hustle mentality of like, right, actually, I'm going to have to give a lot more than I get at this point. And that's okay because that's the stage of business that you're in. And then it's going to grow and evolve. And then you're going to, start to eke into the 6-figure side of it and the multi-6 figures. And that strategy has to change again. And we go, right, okay, I can no longer hustle in the same way. I have to hustle in a different way and I have to bring in team members potentially. And I mean, you might still be able to get away with it, but it'll be hard. So definitely bringing somebody in to go, okay, so what are these $10 tasks that, Vicky mentioned earlier, what are the $100 ones, etc. And then being able to really strip everything back and almost ask yourself both of those questions from where both of your angles are coming from is like, okay, so what is the ROI? Because I'm now at that stage where my time is so crucially important. And I'm at that crunch point in the business where I'm like, if I take this amount of time out, that is going to have a negative impact financially or whatever it may be, versus, actually, no, do you know what? We've got it into a really stable position now. I can now afford a bit more time out. And now I want to go and give back and I want to help and I want to do this and I can afford to do that. And then the next season will come along and maybe you've got a new launch of a new product or you're busy doing conferences or whatever it may be. And we go, right, in that period, I can't do it. And it's always this dance of life. Like we're not a huge fan of that work-life balance thing or balance in any way in terms of your business, because I think that the weights are never going to be balanced. It's this dance, it's this give and take, it's this to and fro, it's the seasonality, it's the economy, it's everything that impacts it. And I think it's having that skill set to be able to bend and flex and pivot, but always come back to a strategy with a plan that you can execute and go, right, what is this one thing that I'm focusing on right now? All of my attention goes on that. And then as soon as that's up and running and that's working so beautifully, you then start looking at the next thing. And I think this is where dog trainers specifically really struggle because we've started to create an industry of general practitioners where we are operating from I'm just going to be everything to everyone. And you could weave that niching bit back in there, I suppose, but I'm going to try and do everything. I'm going to do the 6-figure strategy for a business that I'm barely making a living. And now I'm stuck and now I don't know where to go. And I don't know what your thoughts are on the industry in its current state from a business perspective.
A lot of great points there, because I think that's actually the hardest pivoting point, or actually growth point, I should say, is probably the more proper word, is that $50,000, well, let's use US dollars. So 50,000 or pound range. It's about the same now, I think, with the weakening dollar. But, think about that, low to mid 5-figure range of somebody that's dog training. That's actually one of the most difficult spots to be in, because you're not going to have a ton of resources to dump into things like I need to get a marketing coach, or I need to, I got to really watch where I'm spending my money. Do I buy this new product that I saw, these new muzzles or whatever? And you're struggling because you're at that stage of growth where you're really having to wear all those hats, because you can't afford to hire anybody yet. You can't, necessarily say, oh yeah, I can get this 6-7-figure growth because I'm going to hire people, because you're just not bringing in that income yet. So that's tough, because you're also learning all of the aspects as a solopreneur. So I find that that's the most difficult stage. So I empathize with anybody going through that, because I did it. I was doing this. I was, a part-time dog trainer as I was working at the casino that I was at. So I would work from like 4 a.m. till noon, my casino job, and then I go train dogs in the afternoon. So I was putting those 100-hour work weeks in. That's a hard spot, because you're really grinding it out, right? You're hustling. But the thing that a couple things. The secret sauce for me, though, is always in the tasks that you do. Doesn't matter what the task is. How can you automate that? How can you streamline that? How can you make it more efficient? That's every aspect of your life. Because what can happen is, and some people have probably heard the 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss's book, but similar concept is, think about every single thing you do, and every single day, at least at one time, be like, how can I streamline? How can I make this more easy? How can I make this more efficient so I spend less time on it? And that is through everything in your life. And when you start doing that, you start shifting towards an investment towards your time back. And that's what I was talking about with hiring people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Can you look at your email process? Is there a way to streamline that where you're using a template where you find yourself responding the same thing to people, like how to acclimate a muzzle every 5 seconds, because that's the type of client you're attracting. Can you streamline that? Put that in an email. Can you put the template? Can you put it in a video format where you just send people that link? Those are simple things, but over time, you're buying a ton of your time back. And so I've put that particular sort of mindset in place for the last probably about 8 or 9 years now. And where it's given me back sort of this luxury that I have now of being able to kind of do what I want when I want to, without worrying about the time cost of it. So for instance, being in Japan for 3 weeks, do I need to work? Not necessarily. Did I work? A little bit, but it's because I spent hundreds of hours investing my thought process into making time efficiencies. So everything I have is now almost automated, whether it's somebody requesting to, ask for CEUs, or they want to sign up for this course, or it's this particular marketing email that needs to go out. I either have somebody that does that for me, or it's systemized, so that way I don't do anything. And you can get you can really get into the weeds with this, with things like Zapier and all kinds of integrations you can do with different sites and plugins. But especially in today's age of technology, a lot of the stuff we can do can be automated. I had done that when I was still taking clients. I was using something called Acuity, and there's apps like Pocket Suite that are out there that they're just business platforms where you take payment, scheduling, all of that stuff happens automatically. So I had streamlined it so much that I never talked to a client until the actual moment I showed up on the Zoom call. Everything else was done. They signed the contract, gave me their information, paid, all of that stuff, call schedule. I just look at my calendar. Oh, I've got a client at 3 o'clock today. And that was my first contact with them. So it's just that kind of mindset really does help when it comes to that when you're in that stuck in that zone of like, all right, I'm making mid 5 figures, but I want to get to that 6 figure level, but I need more time to do it. The way to do that is you got to get your time back. So you can now invest your time to get to that 6 figure level where then you can start hiring people, right? You get to the mid 6 figures, and then you can get into the 7 figures. You're typically going to have, 5 to 10 people working for you at that stage. For most businesses I see, especially in the dog training space, and then the handful of 8 figure businesses I've visited, they've got, teams of maybe 100 people. So you can see that 100 people, oh my gosh, that's like an army of people that would be working for me. But once you get into that 8 figure range, then you need the team. You can't do that yourself. There's no way. So, but that only comes with that mindset of this thing I'm doing today, how can I make that more efficient? How can I make that automated where I don't need to spend time on it anymore, or very little time? And just rinse and repeat that process through every single thing you do, without, of course, giving the shorthand to the dogs we're working with, our clients we're working with. Obviously, we're staying, we're focusing on good training plans and good customer focus, but all the other things in your business, you can streamline them. And that is by far the best thing I've ever done. And because it took me a while to get out of that mindset. When you think I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner, I'm got to hustle culture, because there's always somebody that's going to be working more than me. And if I don't do that, I'm going to fail. And that is true to an extent, but that's not sustainable in the long run. There's very few people that truly like, I need to work 100 hours a week or else I'm going to go nuts. It's usually the opposite. I'm working 100 hours a week and I'm making myself nuts. So the way to undo that is just get into that focus, streamline everything. And that'll get you to the next stages through the steps we were talking about.
Yeah. And I think for us, it's knowing which parts, because we've got some automations in our business. And funnily enough, we just had a meeting last night with our CRM provider and realised we can do a lot more with it. But I think for us, it's realising that the bits that we need to automate, we need to get them working really shit hot. And then there's parts of our business that we know shouldn't be automated, because that's where that human connection part and the collaboration and all of that. And I think, again, it comes down to those 10, 100, £1,000 tasks, doesn't it? To kind of go, because I think a big mistake, a big trend in the UK anyway, I don't know about in the US, is when dog trainers feel they're at a point to invest in staff or grow their business and invest it in some way, it's to get staff to have like this empire of people working with them. So it might be there's a dog trainer and there's somebody who does, like, say, for example, like Sarah Fisher's worker, and a canine massage therapist and an agility trainer. And they have this kind of romantic idea of bringing all these people under one own organisation and business. And then they are paying all of their wages, offering all these different services. They are not earning anything themselves because they've got the stress of running the whole show and paying everyone else first. And they, again, I think it's coming back to that, trying to be a 6-figure business before it's even got one person earning a decent amount of money before they add the next person and the next person. And the investment isn't going on things like tech or accountants or anything like that. It's going, let's bring another person who's a dog pro in. And I get that. I totally understand it. But I think, why don't we wait until we've got all these other things in place first? Then we start building that business into that amazing empire. Do you see that kind of trend happening in the US?
Yeah. Because if you don't have the infrastructure in place, it doesn't matter who you could have the best trainers in the world, but if nobody knows about them and you have no way of supporting the business side of things and making it easy for them to book that person and bring in the business, then it really doesn't matter who you have as trainers. You could assemble the best team of trainers in the planet and bring them all to your facility. But again, if nobody knows about them, that's, so you're losing out on that investment. So, put those systems in place. Think about how, again, if you were to bring in another person, a great trainer that's going to teach agility when you're focused on behavior issues, so you're expanding the scope of your business, you have to think about how you can support that person first. And you can't do that if you're not even supporting yourself first with systems that are really streamlining and making it easy for people to book you, and the business is coming in, right? And even then, you're going to have to remember there's going to be slow periods. So at a stage where I was taking aggression cases, I was booked out many months in advance, the typical, high demand trainer in the area, because I got lucky. There's not a lot of people working with aggression cases in my location, but um, it just, you find yourself so busy. And I could have been like, well, I could hire somebody else, but I don't even have my stuff together with keeping my everything streamlined for me. I'm just hustling here and taking every client I can, but getting burnt out in the process. So would it make sense for me to bring in another trainer right now? Probably not. I have to fix what I'm doing from my systems standpoint, and then I can support another trainer. So, and that could be little things, even if it's hiring a virtual assistant, that's not going to cost you too much to do those little tasks. Game changer. It can be a complete game changer for you. So, to find out, again, it goes back to everything we've been talking about, is find out where those tasks that you find somebody can replace that are not high cost tasks, and replace it with somebody else or a system in place. And then once that's there, you can start looking, okay, now I feel good. I've got a good foundational base for my business to bring in other trainers, to bring in a systems-based business where people can easily book. Then you can do that. So, yeah, look at my model. I actually was the only face of the brand for quite some time, and now that I'm fortunate again to work with so many other talented trainers and bring them in to teach for me. But I didn't do that for first 5 years of what I was doing when Aggressive Dog was established. So, it took some time.
Yeah, it's I think there's two things in that. I think we live in a world and society now where there's a very key theme, or two key themes that are running through. And one of those is this instant gratification. It's that whole, oh, I want to do something and see an instant win off it. So if I put a post out on social media advertising that I've got so many spaces available on a one-to-one program or a workshop or whatever that may be, why is it not selling out from that one post? Like, how dare it? It's not working. Oh, let's move on to the next thing and let's try something else. It's like, well, hold on. that one post is not enough as a fully tested thing. Like, you've got to keep doing it. Even like from a marketing perspective, we know there is data, there is facts now that suggest and prove that people need to consume something or consume your work for at least 7 hours before you're even on their radar. And we think by putting one post out on your local Facebook group is going to be enough. It's not going to happen. So I think this instant gratification is a key theme that is running through everything, alongside those that are dipping their toe into listening to other people in the entrepreneurial business coaching space. This multiple streams of income is a big thing as well. Going, make sure, you're not just solely reliant on your business, like your one key business, because if that fails, then you've got no other thing. But I think the key message that is missing from that is, well, you can't grow several businesses at the same time. And if you've not got one operating so damn well that, like both of you have said in terms of bringing staff members on, if you're not able to ensure that you are paying yourself the salary that you need to survive, and hopefully a little bit more so you can actually breathe a little bit, and you've got systems and stuff in place, and you know that you are fully booked all the time. You only have to do it like, what your lead generation is. You know exactly how you are going to fill somebody else's books before even entering that space of bringing them on. If you've not got a business that's operating from that level, why are we going to start another business? I tell my husband off for this a lot. He's like a serial entrepreneur where he's like, I'm just going to try this thing because it's a great idea and I can make some money from it. And then we go in and then he lasts like 2 weeks and goes, didn't quite work. Let's go do something else. I'm like, oh my God, it's exhausting. And it's not working, clearly. Yeah. Do your one thing. And now he's finally listened to me after several years and he's gone in on one thing. I was like, oh, look at that. It's working. And now you're starting to get a sustainable income. And now you're starting to do this. And now you're starting to grow. Shock, horror. Should have listened to me all these years ago.
But it's back to that.
That advice is definitely, it comes from people that mean well, but they don't recognize that not everybody's like them. So this, the people that say, oh, multiple streams of income, great, because they've already done it. Usually, hopefully, if they're giving that advice. But that's not easy to do. It's just like saying somebody that's a really great athlete, okay, or triathlete or something. So you're going to go do your biking, your swimming, and then go do your running, but don't forget the push-ups, right? And so it's easy for them to be like, well, let's do multiple types of exercise. But for the person that has never done any of those things, it's they're not going to be good at it. So you have to, as you're establishing your first business, make that one successful. Then you have the skills, you start to understand things like what ROI means. You start to understand like where the needs are, where you're filling needs, not necessarily wants in the type of business you're in. You start to understand all of the marketing, because that can then translate into another business. Be like, okay, I knew how to grow this business and I know those nuts and bolts of making a business, of being an entrepreneur. Now I can form another stream of income, maybe related to dogs, or maybe not. Maybe I can take some of the money I'm making here and invest it into something else. So that's how you can develop those multiple streams. But that's tough advice to hear. So I don't like when people get discouraged. They're like, I don't have multiple streams. Well, don't worry about it right now. Get that one stream, then start to add multiple streams. Let's get that one going though first.
Yeah, that's it. Even Alex Hormozy, who I'm a massive fan of, his key learning from 2024 was very much about why is everybody in a rush to try and create this big thing instead of take your time? Because the more you take your time with it and the more you focus on that one thing, and it's his one, I mean, I don't think he really looks at it as a regret, but he kind of falls in that category of if he could do his time again, he would just focus on one thing, because he tried to do too many things at once. And he's like, I learned from it. And he's only had that realization now, like 14 years later or whatever it is, and going, just do the one thing. And he's totally streamlined his business model into doing that. In fact, Lisa Johnson, who we've also had on our podcast, she's really big in the online space and also in the business coaching space. And she had loads of different products, but she started with one, grew it all, and now she's gone, actually, no, it's too much and I'm going to strip it all back. And now she offers 3 things. And I think they're just really important learnings to take from an industry outside of the dog world, that these people are multi-millionaires and billionaires in some cases, and they are telling you their mistakes. And it's like, we're only hearing the stuff that's like, do the thing, do 1 million social media channels. And it's like, just strip everything back and just focus on one thing at a time. And I actually believe if we do that, we may actually combat the whole imposter syndrome thing as well. Because if you're just doing one thing and you are spending your time and your energy and your investment in being the expert in your craft, whether that's your business or your niche or whatever it is, it's almost impossible to feel like an imposter because you're putting the work in.
Absolutely. And I will add that I think with authenticity is important too. Because people rush. They want to make a bunch of posts. They want to get known, and then it becomes a little. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like the real person, because they're trying to maybe say things in a way that they wouldn't typically say, and that can come off as not as genuine. So and I think people are craving that. They want people on social media not just influencing and by doing silly things or creating conflict with others. There's a space for that. I mean, that stuff definitely gets the clickbait and definitely gets the attention. But I think especially in this profession, I think we need to be looking at that professional side of things, and not only how we treat others, but the authentic part of it is not saying, okay, the before and after type videos and all those things. Again, great for marketing, but let's be authentic in how we do it, because what's going to happen for the people that are pushing things outside of those boundaries of authenticity is people aren't going to trust that. And I think there's a contingent of people on social media that's saying, hey, I want the real thing. I don't want this stuff that's flashy and it looks good for social media. I want to know this person's real and they're genuine and they're going to be empathetic to my needs and my problems without faking it, right? So just want to add that thought too.
No.
And it's back to that personal brand and how important that is to people, isn't it? To build that trust and nurturing, and that secondary messaging is what people really connect to. So when we're looking at marketing, look at the connection in marketing. It's the person behind the business, the story, the origins, like where you came from to where you are now. And those are the stories and Those are the things that people really need to hear. They don't really need to see all those flashy things, like you said. You know, they're great in one aspect, like people do need like credentials and credibility and testimonials and all that. But the other bit is the bit that really sells. So it's getting comfortable in the uncomfortable, in what you can do as a person to show yourself in whatever way, shape or form is good for you, or wherever you start, and how you can just push it a little bit and just keep, you know, getting out of that comfort zone. My God, we've had to get out of our comfort zone the last 18 months, like in a ridiculous way, but it's growth. And it's, you know, we're about to go on stage in the Legs conference next month, and like that is pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone, but it's all part of the mission. It's all part of getting that message out there. So, you know, got to do it.
Yeah. No, the authenticity bit is so important. I think even more so now than ever before, with the introduction of AI and how that is taking over, and how technology continues to grow and be an incredible tool in your kit for innovation. However, it doesn't replace you and your quirks and how you say things and how you show up, and being that real and raw person behind the brand. And 2024, the back end, and certainly into 2025, we are definitely in a space now of personal brand. These faceless brands are not cutting it like they used to. The marketplace is changing, and people want to feel that connection. They want that tangible aspect again. And I think the pandemic had a huge part in the change in that marketplace and that landscape. And we can no longer hide behind a logo and pictures of dogs. We have to start showing up and going, hi, I am here. This is me. I'm Joe. That's Vicky. We've got shit going on. We're not perfect, but this is our belief. This is what we love, and we're here to help. If you're in, awesome. Let's have a chat. And if not, totally fine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my preference is to follow somebody's journey, you know? So I love when I see accounts that just like, hey guys, follow me today as I'm going to go train this dog, and, you know, and they just talk through it, and they don't try to be flashy. They don't try to say, this is the best thing, and this is why these trainers don't do this and this and that. It's just, they're being authentic. They're just saying, okay, follow me on my journey. And they're humble at the same time. That for me is the trainer that I am going to be paying attention to, and hopefully bring onto my platform at some point. You know, I love the authenticity of that, the humbleness, the empathy, not the, look at me in this training and I'm better than this person because this training is going to do this and that. And I get it. There's a space for that, and there's people that are going to latch onto that. But for me, I'd rather see much more of that side of trainers and just follow their journey, because you learn so much more about them. And I got to say, if I was a client, that's the person I'm going to be going with. I'm going to feel much more comfortable with that person that's humble, modest, just going to tell you, you know, they're going to show up and do the best for you, not because they want to create some videos for Instagram later that they can use or things like that. Right. So that's going to show up. That's what people follow, you know, and I've been fortunate to hear that comment. You know, people see my podcast or, you know, listen to what I have to say, and they feel comfortable, because I feel like there's just no need to go after others to build your business or your brand. You know, just be yourself, and that'll be enough. You don't have to attack others or say, look at this person doing this badly, so now look at me, I'm better, or, you know, this self-righteousness that comes in. It just, for me, you know, that's me. That's what I pay attention to, and I really see that. And when I see that in somebody, it makes me happy.
Yeah, no, we love that sort of stuff. And we've always said that actually the reason we genuinely believe our dog business went so well, so the actual training business, was not because we were kick-ass business people, because we didn't arrive with these skills. We've learned them, and we've grafted, and we work hard at it, and we've learned from it. But that authenticity bit of, we had so many people come to us and go, oh my God, the actual reason I wanted to work with you is because you openly admit that you haven't got a perfect dog. Because some of these trainers, they make it out to be that, you know, they've got these perfect demo dogs that just are so obedient and they do all this stuff. And they're like, I don't want that. I just want a family dog that's going to, and again, depending on who you're targeting for your client base and what your business stands for. But for us, that was exactly our ideal audience for those that would go, do you know what? I am busy. I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I've got 2 huskies, and we've got businesses that we're running. We've got this. And do you know what? I drop the ball sometimes and I'm not great. And some days, no, they only get like a 10-minute walk around the block. And yes, okay, shit on me. How dare you? But I'm busy and I've got life, and actually they're well cared for. They're happy. Look at this. Okay, I could be doing more, but so couldn't we all in every aspect of life? So showing up and being that raw and real versions of ourselves is actually what attracted a lot of people to work with us. And actually, I'd say that's followed through into this business as well, that we show up and we say it's hard, and people have gone through my university journey with me and how much it has drove me insane, and how I cannot wait that I have nearly finished 2 exams and we're done. And my journey of deciding, actually, I started it with wanting to go down the clinical behaviourist route, and how I've decided that actually, no, CBA is my calling, but I'm still happy that I've got that as part of my journey and all the other stuff that goes on. But we share it not as a, oh, feel sorry for me, or an ego boost or anything like that. It's just this is literally life. And if anything, it pulls everything back to that mission and what we're trying to do, which is inspire that change and inspire somebody to go, look, it's possible. If you've got a dream that's big enough and you really want this, then it's achievable. And if you believe that we are the right people to support you and go along that journey with you, then we'd love it. And if not, cool, when you're ready. And which may never be the case, but we're here. And it's those businesses that show up in that space that I think attract more, because of the landscape that we're in now, and people need to see that raw and real version of everybody.
It's the air quotes nice thing about that toxic climate is that it's gonna push people your way, right? Your safe space, when there's so much of this other stuff going on in the world and in the dog world, just if you're that safe haven, then it's, that's where they're gonna gravitate towards.
Yeah.
I love it.
This has been amazing, this episode.
Oh, has been fun. Right. Do you think?
Right. We've got one last question for you then, Mike. Who do you know, now you know all about CBA, all about our mission, what we're trying to achieve, who do you know that would be an awesome guest to come on this podcast and push our cause even further? So it might be in the dog world, might be in the business world, might be someone totally outside the box, but yeah, anyone spring to mind?
Gary Vaynerchuk on?
Oh my God, we'd love that.
It's on the list.
It would just be like beep, beep, beep all the way through.
Grant Cardone, can you imagine? 10x everything, man!
All at once. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk would be absolutely awesome. Do you know him?
Not personally, because he doesn't own a dog, so.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, in the dog street, there's so many people that I think would be just brilliant, depending on what aspects you're looking at. You can look at other course creators, sort of like, there's a ton of them, like Denise Fenzi, Christina Spalding, Irit Bloom, who works with Christina. There's, Allie and Emily that do the enrichment stuff. There's so many people that are like kind of doing what I do. You guys, of course, know Kim Brophy. So yeah, it's the sky's the limit on terms of the online spaces. And then you can look at maybe the large brick and mortar kind of businesses as well that are doing 7 or 8 figures. Like Andre Yu out in Canada, he's definitely would be a good one. Yeah, he's got a big multi-location business. So places like that, I'm always impressed with. So yeah, it's
Yeah, a few there we can
I love it.
get our teeth into. Yeah.
We will be sending invites out.
Yeah, awesome. So where can people find out more about you if they are inspired by this conversation and want to know more about you?
sure. The easiest place is aggressivedog.com, that old domain name.
That old domain, yeah.
Many years ago. But yeah, everything's on there. You can get access to the podcast that I have, The Bitey End of the Dog. The conference information's on there. We do the annual conference that'll be happening in September of this year, September 26th to 28th, the Aggression in Dogs Conference. All the courses and webinars. I do 10 webinars a year with different guests. guest mentor sessions where I bring people in. Dr. Tim Lewis is doing a session for us tonight. So yeah, everything is on there. Tons of articles too, free articles, free videos, all kinds of free resources for dog guardians as well.
Love it.
Awesome.
Oh,
We'll add it to the show notes.
love it.
Thank you so much for your time. And again, another amazing chat. We love speaking to you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.